Hi New Zealand and welcome to another G News update. This morning we saw Christopher Luxon deflect away from questions about taking responsibility for his government's policies to things like New Zealanders don't want homelessness, or there's complex needs out there, mental health issues, I think, and well, there's a range of issues out there, and I get what people are saying. And let's just take a step back. So all of these kind of markers are signs of a deflection of a Prime Minister who's unable to actually take responsibility for the obvious, bloody obvious truth that when he tightened up those eligibility criteria for people to get an emergency home in August 2024, by September, homelessness was exploding, and all these other factors that are a range of factors that Christopher Luxon is talking about being contributors to homelessness, they just stayed the same. They were constant. The one thing that changed in August 2024 was government policy around access to an emergency house. And all the providers said it had gone from 9 out of 10 people could actually get access to an emergency home to suddenly all of them saying, look, you just can't get one. It's bloody impossible. It's just impossible to get an emergency home now. So this morning we actually saw Christopher Luxon trying to blow this off. Now, one of the first things that he does when he deflects away from the obvious truth and, the evidence is to, first of all, call it anecdotal and just to refer to providers as what people are saying, not expert people that are actually witnessing the reality.
Did the government's emergency housing policy push people onto the streets?
No, don't get there. I mean, I've seen the report. I've seen what people have been saying anecdotally about that. I just think.
And he also says, let's take a step back.
If you take a step back.
I don't know, there must be hundreds of times now that Christopher Luxon has talked to Jenny May and said, let's take a step back. And this is a big signal to everyone in New Zealand that Christopher Luxon is about to deflect away from the actual question and go to some other topic like mental health or what New Zealanders don't want to see.
If you take a step back, Kiwis don't want to see homelessness. We get that. We know that it's pretty tragic circumstances. The reality is that there are actually very complex needs often with the homeless, and it is often around mental addiction. Mental health issues is often about addiction issues.
To be followed by something else, like his denials around a causal link here.
I think, making the causal link to the emergency housing piece is not as simple as it's often been projected out there.
It grinds our gears because the obvious truth is that he changed government policy, immediately homelessness exploded, the providers all said so, and the government denied it and kept on pointing at all the other factors that had stayed constant. Here's Luxon saying the kind of thing I'm talking about. Here he is.
Had thousands of kids growing up in motels. We've moved over 2,100 kids now into dry, safe, good homes, which means they can go to school, they can get a regular doctor's appointment, they can get, life is much more stable. And, that was an absolute abject failure of the previous administration. And at the same time, Jenny May, the other good news on housing is we've taken 6,000 people off the State House social housing wait list who actually don't need a house, who've actually got that sorted. So, after a fourfold increase in State House wait lists, we had thousands of kids in motels. I just wouldn't make that link. Now we'll continue to work hard on the homelessness issue, but I just would, caution to say it's as simple as a causal link to the emergency housing work that we've done and the achievements that we've had there.
And then, of course, once he's poured cold water on the causal link, he also faces down the idea that these stats that we're all referring to happened between September 24 and January 25. Here's Jenny May putting the timing issue to him, but he still just blows it off as if the obvious truth is not the truth and something else is true.
Here's the thing though, Auckland says has a 53% increase in visible homelessness. Now that was between September last year through to January this year. That's from the Auckland Council Community Impact Team. The Housing and Urban Development Homelessness Report, which came out in December 24, says providers are seeing more homelessness and finding it harder for people with genuine need to access help. And
that's why that help is there.
Luxon also tries to make out that the thousands of people that were moved into emergency accommodation during the pandemic, rather than leaving them on the streets, was a moral outrage. So in Luxon's book, they should have stayed on the street during the pandemic, although at the time Luxon didn't speak out, and it's only now in hindsight that Luxon's calling this a moral outrage that we actually move people into emergency accommodation. The truth of the matter was all of New Zealand was in agreement that that was a very good move in the pandemic, and those were good circumstances. We need to look after people, don't we? At the end of the day, we're not that callous, not like Christopher Luxon. And one of the other big myths that Christopher Luxon's carrying on with is that he's spending money. He's spending money on help and wraparound services. Here he is distracting and deflecting away from his government policy to wraparound services and what's paid for.
That's why we do spend $500 million a year with organisations to get wraparound services around those folk that are often in very challenging situations.
So these stats came out after the government changed the policy when it comes to emergency housing.
Well, I'd be very careful about the fact that we don't have great data on homelessness.
When providers are saying, look, we've been turned away, we've been told that because we contributed to our own homelessness, then, there's just nothing for you here. But Christopher Luxon's saying, well, no, that's not true. There's $500 million being paid on this wraparound service. Therefore, every 100% person that goes along gets everything they want. Something like that, which is obviously bullshit. And we shouldn't have to endure this kind of bullshit. And it's really, really objectionable that we have a Prime Minister that's prepared to really blacken the name of politics and blacken the name of all politicians so that New Zealanders cannot trust any of them if they're going to carry on with this kind of deflection and evasive and bull-necked kind of denial of their own responsibilities. Their government policies has caused an explosion of homelessness, period. And there's no kind of wishy-washy anecdotal thing about all of these providers telling us the same thing, and all of these homeless explosions happening around the same time that Christopher Luxon's government brought that policy in. End of story. Bullshit, Luxon. Bullshit. Stop it. We've had enough of the lying and the blame game. Now, the blame game carried on radio this morning on RNZ with Luxon saying that the big problem that he'd identified was inflation. And inflation was running at about 7% under Labour, is the way he likes to put it. But it was also running at like more than 10% in the UK. It was running at something like 10% in the United States for a while. It ran at about 8% in Australia. And many countries actually had a lot higher inflation. Now, was that all Labour's fault? Did Grant Robertson dictate all of that? Or are we seeing a global pattern where inflation went up all around the world because central banks paid out people so that they could keep their jobs and save their lives during a pandemic that could have killed millions more people if we hadn't have actually paid a wage subsidy? So Christopher Luxon leaves all of that out and tries to actually hang things on Labour, and we're sick and tired of this blame game, and it carries on and no one can stop it. And basically the media just gives up. Like Ingrid Hipkiss this morning just goes, okay, and doesn't challenge it because, we're sick and tired of trying to challenge a liar who's persistently, pathologically lying to all of the population, and the media have given up and just go, oh, right, if you repeat it enough, it becomes true for the dumb dogs in Dumbtown. Newstalk ZB, crikey, those people are cheerleaders for this guy. They get a bit upset when he's not right-wing enough, but otherwise they're just, basically part of the cancer, part of the problems that we were facing in New Zealand. Anyway, I'll just move on now to the big circus show we saw yesterday. Remember, we saw this performance art from the national parties. They all played dress-up, having let down Tasman and let down all the people down in flood zones by taking away the $6 billion National Resilience Fund. This crowd of shysters got dressed up yesterday and performed this performance art about infrastructure investment.
Well, g'day everybody. Listen, we're out here at Drury and we're with the fantastic Minister for Infrastructure and Transport, Chris Bishop. Pretty exciting announcement today, mate. Exciting. We got $6 billion worth of projects. Think about that, $6 billion worth of infrastructure projects that are starting.
What a shocker these people are. Like there was nothing new, not one new project to give certainty to all the people who had left New Zealand because there weren't any construction jobs. 15,000 people had lost their jobs because of Nicola Willis and Christopher Luxon and Chris Bishop stalling everything at the worst possible time in a economic cycle where they should have been stimulating the jobs and the growth, but they actually put a handbrake on everything, and their neoliberal idealism and austerity tactics cut jobs and drove about 47,000 people away from New Zealand permanently to Australia, where there was a better, paying set of jobs. There was nobody cutting jobs in the same way that we have under Nicola Willis and Christopher Luxon. And they left, and we're still here dealing with the fact that there were no new projects. There wasn't anything new at all in the mix of those infrastructure projects. And it was an announcement that included projects that had already been announced by the previous government. And it was recycling announcements. And the News Talk ZB people trumpeted this in a triumphant way about, the great, new, bold, fantastic, getting on with it, getting things done government that were actually just opportunistically saying, well, there'll be shovels on the ground before Christmas on a handful of projects, and it's just the start. But these projects were always in train. There's nothing new to actually convince anyone to come back. There's no certainty being given about that by anybody. We also saw yesterday, and I covered it yesterday, that the hype around that infrastructure summit only generated 2 projects out of all the ones that they were saying they were going to get. They only managed to produce 2 projects. How sad! What a fail in anybody's book. It was a complete overhyping and a poor outcome. And this is Christopher Luxon, the Prime Minister of bad outcomes, and he doesn't accept any of the truth. He's going to brush off the truth. With the greatest of respect, does no time for experts, evidence, or anything else. What really happened when you look into the history of the waiting list business when it came to homelessness was that the National Party took out the priority C and priority D people on the state home waiting list before the 2017 election. And so they created a mask of the real need, and they downplayed it, and then they told the public that they were great and amazing and wonderful because, look, the waiting list has gone down. But it didn't reflect the real need. So when Labour came into power with Jacinda in 2017, they said, let's be honest with the public and let's increase the eligibility to be on a waiting list so that it reflects the real need in our society. And so, of course, the waiting list grew. Now, today, Christopher Luxon's looking back and going, how can I manipulate you all? How can I lie? How can I deceive? And what he's basically saying is, well, look, under Labour, the waiting list went up. But it had actually been suppressed and down before Labour got into power. And under National, they've gone about trying to squeeze and limit people that can get on that waiting list and kick them off into homes, warm, dry homes that were actually funded by who? By the Labour Party, of course, when they were in power. Because remember, Labour, they built about 13,000 new state houses. And what did National do? Well, National were busy under Sir Bill English trying to sell them off, flick them out, do a deal, private crony deals, sell some houses, state houses, want to buy something? Psst. What about some contracts, any contracts going? Chris Bishop, any contracts at Kayanga Ora that Bill can make a buck out of? Well, so it was all that kind of business, and that was going on before Jacinda even became Prime Minister. And now, we've built some houses, and the sad fact of the matter is you've got Christopher Luxon trying to revisionist history everything for us, to pull the wool and convince people that don't really follow politics very much that, he's really on the right track here about inflation, even as inflation today is going to go up under his watch. I mean, apparently he's bringing it down while it's going up. So that's laughable, isn't it? That's completely laughable. And after destroying construction in New Zealand, the idea that these guys are rebuilding infrastructure by announcing old projects that have been around for ages, that's just bullshit, isn't it? Isn't it? That's sort of mockingly stupid bullshit. And this is the government that people vote for. Lastly, I just want to talk about inflation. What's going up? Well, You know that the price of food pricing is all going up. We all know that butter's, about $18, or maybe it's $10 or $12 or something like that. But it's way, way up, and it shouldn't be up. They're saying this is good for us, but the core essential stuff that's still going up is the result of privatising our electricity sector. Your power bills have all gone up, haven't they? And that's because John Key decided that it would be a good idea for the National to do a short-term, make a quick buck, rebalance the books and make Sir Bill look good with a surplus, because surpluses were more important than the future. And he sold off to mum and dad investors big portions of these electricity gentailers, and now they are servants to the shareholders, and electricity is costing more and more. They're putting businesses out of business all over the place. Small towns are having chronic unemployment because of Sir John and National Party privatisation ideology. And that's the inflation today. It's part of it is the electricity that's behind all of the electricity that's needed in all of those different sectors in New Zealand. It's driving up inflation. It's not the only thing that's actually driving up inflation. Council rates is another one. Now, the effect of inflation today is sheeted home back to Christopher Luxon again, because if it hadn't been for him cancelling Three Waters, then those rates bills that you all have to pay if you own a house would be so much smaller, so much easier to deal with, and councils wouldn't be copping the flack from the central government, who is overreaching and trying to cap rates without doing any planning or looking into this at all. It's all just knee-jerk, neoliberals, slapdash politics and performance art, and we're being hoodwinked, we're being fooled. We've got people that are prepared to be fast and loose with the truth and expecting our trust when they are prepared to carry on like this. I think it's a complete shocker. I mean, what do you think? I mean, just being lied to every day, it becomes tedious after a while. And I don't think that we should put up with it. I think we should vote out this government. I think we should vote out the liars. I think we should vote out people who are deflecting all the time in our media away from the question. People who are deflecting away with, let's just step back for a minute, or let's just talk about mental health, or let's just talk about complex needs, or let's just talk about people who are actually frontline providers who are seeing every day the effects of government policy in emergency housing. So let's not take this Tama Potaka bullshit any longer, everybody. Let's not take this government and this Prime Minister who is prepared to do morning media rounds on a Monday and just lie his ass off into our faces. Let's not put up with this shit any longer. I say vote them out, vote them out, vote them out. One-term government, off they go, never again. Let's get a better government in place. Come on, everybody, wake up and realise what is really happening. Let's do it. Let's change the government, and let's get back to an inclusive and caring government that gives a crap about the people on the street, that isn't so detached and full of shit. That's all I have to say this morning. Have a great day, and catch you all a bit later on. See you later. Bye.